Hey everyone, welcome back to the Always Closing podcast. Today is episode 9, and I got a very special guest that I've been wanting to interview for a while now. Krys Benyamein, thank you for doing this. Appreciate you coming in. We finally got you in here.
Thank you for having me, man. I remember when you were just starting this, so it's nice to be on the show.
You were supposed to be guest number 1.
I remember.
You literally had a mountain to climb, which we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But how's everything going?
Everything is good, man. Honestly, like overall, getting back in the flow of things. I think today is officially 1 month back at home since, I climbed Mount Everest, but I just came back from climbing it. So getting back in the flow of things, of work with my family.
How's that transition been, coming back in from being away from work for that long and such probably, like a physical feat like that, then coming back to just like normal life again?
Yeah.
How's the transition been?
It hasn't been the easiest, but it hasn't been terrible. It's just kind of like routines, I think everyone likes routines. I know I really like my habits. So it's sort of fighting against the resistance of just not being in the habit of doing stuff. But it's been good, The first couple weeks I was having a lot of, it was a trip. The first 3 weeks, every single night, I would have a dream that I was climbing, and I would wake up before I hit the summit every single night.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Those just stopped about a week ago. But otherwise, it's been nice to be back at the office. Nice to be, getting on the phones again, showing houses, getting in the field.
And you hit the road running, because, we got like 3 projects we're working on this week already,
Yo, thank God.
We just did one, I think, about a week ago. So you're busy right away.
We're really trying, man. God is good. And I think this from being in the industry. All the business is in a cycle. So the stuff that we're putting in the pipe now is kind of stuff that we've been working on for the few months beforehand. So I feel really grateful to have put together a little team, because while we were gone, the wheels were still in motion. The machine was still operating. And I'm just so grateful for that, because there's a lot I'm having some resistance in the sense of getting back in the motions, but I cannot even imagine what it would feel like to be returning and not have the support system of the
coming back to a bunch of problems or, a bunch of fires to put out.
Exactly.
That would make the whole trip, not as worth it,
100%. I think the best part about going away and coming back is being gone for 2 months really forced me to position myself in a way that I wanted the team to continue to succeed while I was gone. So it was very stressful before going, because I was working on all these things, preparing, it's not easy to prepare to be gone for 2 full months.
Yeah.
But what was beautiful is being gone and really nobody having access, like the team not having full access to me, is it caused people to rise to the occasion, It caused the squad to come up with content when I couldn't be at shoot days. It caused them to be, putting out fires in the escrows while we were gone. So it's nice, because I don't think people get the opportunity to do that sort of thing unless they're forced to sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm grateful for. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, having a strong team makes the world of a difference, especially from people like us that we're used to kind of always watching and controlling everything.
Right.
To be able to let go is it's tough, but if you have a really good team, then it makes it so much easier.
100%. And now when I look at just the way the world has changed, what the consumer expects and kind of the experience they want and what they want, buying or selling a home to look like, I don't know how my mom did it for 34 years by herself or 30 years by herself.
Right.
It's only been in the last few that it's been growing where people have roles, showing agents, listing coordinators. And obviously we're wearing multiple hats still, but generally speaking, it's just a lot more dialed, and I think the client is better served for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get more into real estate, I want to dive back into your trip. So I know we lightly touched on it, but Krys literally just got back from climbing Mount Everest, which is crazy just to even say that. But what made you want to do that? Was that always a dream of yours? Was it always a goal to do that? Were you always into hiking and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. Mount Everest has been a goal for probably 10 years, almost 10 years to the date. 2012, I graduated college early, and before I had left, one of my colleagues at school had mentioned Mount Everest, and I was like, you know, that sounds like a pretty dope thing to go experience. And I didn't have any climbing or much hiking experience at that point. So I graduated from college early. I traveled and I worked in Thailand, but I eventually made it to Nepal, and I took a trek, a 30-day trek almost, and just hiking, no technical climbing.
Right.
But I took it when I was just about 21, 10 years ago to the date nearly, and I took a trek from a village called Jiri all the way to Everest Base Camp. And that was the same route that the first two guys that ever climbed Mount Everest, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, climbed. And I saw the mountains, and I had this awakening, and I was like, we're gonna come back and do this one day.
Nice.
And ever since then, I just really believe I had that in the background, and I really fell in love with climbing, that my life kind of started to percolate towards making this goal come true. So I ended up in Las Vegas for law school, and Las Vegas is the mecca of rock climbing. So I spent a few years doing a buttload of rock climbing, and then after law school, I moved up to Lake Tahoe. Specifically because I wanted to figure out how I could practice law but still do a lot of climbing.
Right.
So I moved up north, and I kind of started getting into bigger mountains, but it was always with the intention of Everest.
Right.
Like, it's coming.
So what is the preparation like for something like that, right? I mean, obviously you said you've been doing it for a long time already, but just to the months leading up to that, I imagine you can't just go right into it, right? You got to really prepare your body for something
No,
like that.
I think, I don't think anybody ever shows up and is like, oh, I could have trained less. I'm so grateful. To be honest, I sort of trained, not in a cheesy way, but just kind of like my life depended on it. You want to be in the kind of condition that you can perform. But the training specifically that was the most high intense was probably the last 18 to 24 months. So 2 years ago, COVID hit, and right when COVID hit, I was supposed to climb Denali. Okay. So I was preparing to go to Alaska to climb Denali, and then COVID hit. That derailed me for a little bit. The following year, I went to Bolivia and climbed in the Andes.
Wow.
So I was training for about 7 months to climb some...
So you're already in high altitude.
Yeah, exactly. I think what they say is if you perform good above 6,000 meters, which is about 21,000 feet, that you should be okay above 8,000 meters, which is 26,000 feet. That's like a category of its own mountain, Everest being one of them. So I was training super hard to go to Bolivia. That was, it was a good trip. I didn't summit everything I planned to, but it was a good trip. My body did well. And then I came back, and it was immediately sort of assessing with my family, because it's like such a big decision. I think anybody that owns their own businesses knows that, like, when you have big goals and you're really working on shit, when you're really working on stuff,
You can cuss, don't worry. It's all right.
When you're really working on stuff and you have these big dreams and aspirations, it takes so much more than just you to help make them happen. I know we were just talking about teams, but like to do something like climb Everest and not have the support of my family, support of my wife, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So I came back from Bolivia. I gave my family maybe like a week or two to just not have to think about me climbing. And then I pretty quickly jumped into saying, hey,
I'm doing this.
I want to do this. How do you guys feel? And they got behind me pretty quick. And the training was on since then. But yeah, specifically, I would say 18 months. I was very focused on my training, and it got super scientific. I went and I did a bunch of physical exams at like a lab in Santa Monica, lactic threshold tests, VO2 max, setting you up to machines, and all like heart rate zoned type things. And that's a lot of my training. It was always with a heart rate monitor or a heart rate monitor on my wrist, and kind of like training for a marathon.
Yeah. And I saw that your mom did part of the climb with you, right?
Yo, mom is a beast. So I took my mom up Kilimanjaro, which is a little bit under 20,000 feet. It's the biggest mountain in Africa, and she crushed it. And she's been following this Everest story for 10 years. You know, as long as I've been climbing, I've been talking about climbing this mountain eventually.
Right.
So when everything was coming together and just where she is physically and mentally and just her strength, as I was organizing, I said, do you want to come to base camp with me? And then when you get there, like I stay, and that's when you come home. Yeah. She's like, yeah, I'd love to. So she trained and was motivated, and she crushed it. She really...
That was awesome.
Yeah, base camp is pretty high. Base camp is 17,800, and it's just hiking. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing technical up to base camp, but it's physical to be out there for so many days. You know, it's exhausting.
How long did that take her?
I think 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's what made it more difficult than Kilimanjaro. Is with Kili, it's a hike, right? It's not technical, but it's only about a week.
Right.
I think we did it in 6 days. And then this is double the length. So a big part of Everest is the cumulative fatigue. On the real, man, like, it's no one day is too hard. It's just cumulatively,
right,
how do you recover and how do you keep showing up for 2 months? Because it's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. And I think that is the most challenging. Somebody over there described it as death by 1,000 cuts. And I think that's like accurate. You know, it's not one thing that does it.
That's totally insane that you did. How did it feel when you finally made it to the peak?
Man, it was a dream come true. You know, it was something that I had envisioned in my mind's eye for as long as I can remember. It was a little bit different than what I had imagined because we summited in the middle of the night. We got up at 3:13 in the morning, so there was no sunrise. It was dark, but there was a full moon that night. The full moon was the next day, so it was still really bright, but not bright enough to get like good pictures and videos. But we got some stuff, and at the end of the day, you know, and this is coming from somebody that loves posting, loves being on like the internet and sharing and being social, but at the end of the day, you have to want it for way more than reasons like getting the photos and the videos, because it's just too long and physical to do it for any other reason than really, really wanting it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your team for a little bit. Well, specifically your mom.
Oh, yeah.
Because you guys have been in business for a while now, right? But what made you want to go into real estate and follow her footsteps?
So real estate has always been something that I've known because mom and dad have been in the game 34 years. So we own our own brokerage, All Stars Realty in Norwalk. My dad's been the broker. My mom has been one of the top producers in Southeast Orange County for, truly the last like 30 years. So I think in my heart, I always knew I was going to be in the business of in some capacity.
Right.
But it was important for me to sort of run away and become like something that I did on my own. I was very privileged growing up, and I'm so grateful for all the opportunities my family gave me, but it was big for me to try to do something without them.
Right.
So after practicing law for a few years in Nevada, I met my now wife. My sister was going through some things. My family was just, like, my parents were not getting any younger. So I just said, it's like time to come back, you know?
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. That was the big decision. And it's felt like, it's been great. I loved being a lawyer, but I don't think it was like my
passion.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those things that I had to do, you know? I
Right.
think there was parts of lawyering that I liked, but there's a lot of it that's very similar. You know,
you marked it off the checklist, it's done.
You know, sometimes it feels like I'm just fucking doing things to check things off, but that's that's like not my goal at all.
I got you. And then, you know, I really appreciate your guys' relationship because, you know, me and my mom, we run the Escrow company together. Right. And I've worked there for, 15 years, and more in the last 5 years, I've kind of taken more of a ownership role there and managing the whole thing.
Right.
So I know the ups and downs and working with family, and 95% of the time we're on the same page about stuff. So we have a really great team as well.
Right.
What do you do when you and mom don't get, you're not on the same page about something? Because for me, it's a little bit difficult because at the end of the day, it's your mom. Right. So even though if you want to butt heads or you want to say like, no, you're wrong, or I think I'm right, like it's still your mom.
100%. You know, I think there's a lot of maturity in that because the older I get, the more I realize what's my intention, what's my goal? Is my goal to be right or is my goal to be happy? Mm-hmm. So sometimes, especially when it comes to my mom or my wife, I have to step back and say, what am I trying to accomplish here? Whether I'm right or wrong, I just want everyone to be be copacetic. Like I just want everyone to be happy. So I think very similar to your relationship with your mom, we agree on like 95% of the stuff. And as the business, since I've been in it with her, has developed more, we definitely like know, or we begin to like see our strengths.
Right.
At the end of the day, I really do defer to a lot of her judgment and go to her for advice. But she's also very humble. So I feel like she knows how to sort of step back and look at a situation. I'm grateful for our relationship because for a lot of years, and I don't know if this is the same, but for a lot of years growing up, she was always in the business and working very hard. So I certainly got her work ethic from her, but a component of being in this business with them is just wanting a relationship with my parents, you know?
Yeah.
If my folks were selling ice, I would be a really good ice salesman, you know? It's just you fill in the widget. This is like my family. I'm very grateful it's real estate. Like I'm really happy it's something that serves people, helps like provide a good lifestyle. Like we're very blessed. But yeah, my family plays like a big component in that. And that's kind of, you know, that bleeds over into the team. Our first buyer's agent, who was my mom's TC even before I got in the business, is my cousin, Ness.
Okay.
So she was my mom's right hand, like well before I got here, you know? So I mentioned my dad is the broker. So it's
definitely a family environment within the office.
Very.
Same with us. I mean, a couple people that work for me have worked with me on other projects outside of Escrow. They never even knew what Escrow was before I brought them over here. Sometimes we've had family work with us. So it's cool to have like a smaller business where it does feel like a family environment. Right.
And I think, you know, we were talking about the teams, but I love, you can still keep things. I got this term, I think like Tom Ferry uses it. It's how you want your team. And some people build like these Navy SEAL teams, you know, small, strong teams. Other people are building mega teams. But I'm just so grateful for having people because they're resources in a sense of helping us get to help more people. It's been interesting coming back from Everest and sort of shifting my focus because that has kind of been the focus since I've been back is I'm still prospecting, I'm still working with buyers and sellers, but for the most part, things I'm cultivating, I'm trying to help by like helping the buyer's agents that were help grow, you know? So I'm focusing on scripts and role playing. And
I mean, that's my next question is, let's talk about your social media presence, because obviously you put a lot of time and effort, you know, I think everybody can tell, you and your mom on both of your accounts. So what kind of started that whole journey and why is it so important that you put so much time and effort into something like that?
Man, this could be like a whole podcast in itself. Huge kudos to Nahid, my mom, because she was told in 2017, if you don't start making videos, you're gonna die on the vine. And my mom's heart is really in this business and wants to stay in it and wants to connect with people. So like a real trooper, she was coached into starting to make content, and she did. Not nearly to the volume that we're making it now, but she leaned into it and she committed to it. And then I came in 2018, a year after she got started, and truth be told, I went to a Tom Ferry seminar that first year in the industry. He was talking about video being critical. I was prospecting, I was doing this and that, but I was really trying to figure out how I could add even more to the business. And I said, I have to do this. It's like, I gotta do this. So it started just making one video a week. And then from one video a week, it turned into now we're just committed to posting every single day.
Yeah, and what I like about you guys' videos is I think a lot of people understand how important it is, right? If you're in this industry, you have to make video content.
Right.
It's crucial, right? But you'll see a lot of the content out there is kind of the same type of stuff.
Sure.
Your stuff is different. Your stuff stands out. So, I mean, how do you come up with these ideas? You know, where do you get that inspiration from? So
I'm very grateful for the team that I have, my film guys, because creatively they're helping really push my stuff. So they're making music videos and I think a lot more artistic things, and I know that influence comes into my content. But I think I just started figuring it out by showing up every day. So for anybody that's been sort of like following the progression of kind of the videos we're making, I think I'm the most comfortable doing informational stuff. I think it's like my lawyering background or just wanting to be able to hang my hat on facts. But like my most comfortable and probably most enjoyable type of content to make is like giving people data and explaining it. And I think I like do a decent job of that. So it started doing that, and then as we get more into that, it's like, well, what do the people want? And then the comedy stuff sort of like struck a chord. So it's just trying things, you know. You hear that saying, you have to find your voice.
Right.
But how do you find your voice if you're not actively singing? And I think with real estate agents specifically, it's very hard to get over ourselves. And it's not just real estate agents, it's everybody, but it's really difficult when people are measuring themselves from views or likes or shares and this and that, and it can create like a lot of anxiety to the point that people just don't want to act. And you know, you have to push past that resistance. I think you have to push past that initial resistance, because it's only once you get past that that you can start cranking out enough content to start finding your voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hardest part. Even when I started this podcast, you know, like the first couple episodes, it was like a little nerve-wracking, like, you know, because even before this, I was never really on camera too much, you know, like
Totally.
I'm always behind the camera.
Right.
So, yeah, after like 2-3 episodes, it just started rolling, you know, and now I'm just pretty comfortable doing it. And
totally,
you know,
and you get better at it, and you see, you know, it's kind of like anything, it's planting seeds, you know, these things take a while to cultivate, and it's dope, but it also bums people out, the scale, you know. If a video gets 1,000 views or 12 views, that's still more people than you're probably having a conversation with every day.
Right.
It's obviously not as good as having the phone number, but it's definitely better than zero.
It's making some kind of impact.
Oh, 1,000,000%. It's top of mind. So I think, I mean, I'm just the same as everybody else, and I definitely suffer from some anxiety. I definitely wake up in the morning feeling some type of way, especially with all this transition. And the content thing can be rough because, you know, in the agent sphere, there's people that are like crushing it. There's people in other spheres, and it's hard not to compare yourself, but you have to remove yourself from the equation to figure out what works. And at the end of the day, the goal is to get in front of people and connect with people. So It's been interesting, like even the Everest thing, man. I got a DM today from an agent in San Francisco who said, and I didn't expect the content to go here, but the DM said, hey Krys, like I'm so-and-so, I try to emulate my content around you. I have a seller in Van Nuys, do you work that area?
Wow.
And you just don't have those connections if you weren't showing up. So it's like very flattering. I'm so humbled, like he says something like that. But you know, when I started making videos, I had no intent to be like influencing agents.
Right.
It was like totally focused on buyers and sellers. Yeah. And it's been a complete 180 from what I expected, because now the audience, the most supportive audience, is totally like the real estate community.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was actually with one of my clients, Carlos, earlier, because he's trying to do more videos and stuff like that, and he was actually on the podcast 3 or 4 episodes ago, and I was showing him your content. I was like, hey, I'm interviewing Krys today, like check out his stuff, because this is his thing, you know, he's really good at it. He was even just like busting up, and I was like, you know, it's crazy, like even people that are in the industry, like they really enjoy the content too, not just buyers and sellers. So that's a good point.
100%. And it's just, you know, why not make the referral component of our business 20% of our gross? Why not grow that as a sector the same way you're going to work on a farm, you're going to work on a mailing campaign, you're going to do any of these things and try to cultivate business from these things? Why not referrals be a part of that pie? So I didn't expect that. That was an incidental consequence, but now I'm leaning into it because it's great. And especially we are totally buyer heavy as far as number of transactions. We represent a ton of buyers. My mom's passion has been first-time buyers, and I think naturally our whole team is like, you know, just leans towards that. And as a buyer's agent, to make relationships with listing agents is huge, especially during COVID. Especially during COVID. And I was showing a house, and one of the dudes, the listing agent of the house, was like, oh my gosh, like I love your videos. And I was like, oh my, you just made me look like the man in front of my clients. You know, like you can't pay for something like that.
Right. Oh,
you pay for it in sweat equity. You pay for it in like time behind.
But like you said, it has to be going somewhere, right? I mean, you're not going to see the results from this stuff right away. You just got to keep at it and keep showing up, and eventually then you have those situations, right?
1,000,000%. I mean, if you want to be always closing, if you want to be always closing, I really think you need to have all of this stuff in your arsenal, and it doesn't have to be all equal. You don't have to love it all the same, but you have to do it. So our squad believes in social media marketing. So we're putting YouTube pre-roll videos out. We're putting money behind like our Facebook advertising, but I don't want it to mislead people. We are pounding the phones.
Right.
We are pounding the phones. We are doing open houses for every one of our listings.
Right.
We are doing events. We are doing everything that we can to hit every angle. So for me personally, and it's probably not a secret because you see the videos, I like making the videos. It's a buttload of work, but I love it.
Right.
And I like making the calls, but there's a bit more resistance to that than making the videos.
Right.
But it don't mean that I don't make the calls.
That you're not doing it, yeah.
And it's the same.
It's actually surprising because, I would think that maybe you went so hard on the videos because you're not doing the phone calls. So it's surprising to hear that you're also doing the phone calls.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
I know it's the part that mostly everybody hates doing, right? I mean, it's one of the toughest parts of being in this business is you have to hit those phones.
I don't really understand how people are in this business and don't want to be doing that part. It's, you're just missing out on so much. And this is a cheesy analogy, but are you going to be fishing every day, or are you going to be actively spear fishing every day and hunting? You know what I'm saying? The videos are great because you cast a net and they will come to you, God willing. You get DMs and you set up appointments from that. But are you not going to go out there and try to shoot targets?
Right.
So I think that's a big piece of it. And if you don't, I don't think you're always closing. That's how you get stuck in these holes. And it's very typical, and that's why solo agents have a hard time, and that's why I'm grateful for the team. But you open 12 escrows. As soon as you open 12 escrows, you do no prospecting because you're putting out all your fires. Your 12 escrows close.
And then you're like, now what?
And now what?
Yeah.
And then you grind and grind and grind for 2 months.
Yeah, that's what I tell my salespeople. Just because you're having a good month and a lot of people are opening escrows, it doesn't mean you back off because, once those close, what happens now,
Right.
So you got to constantly be feeding that funnel.
Absolutely.
Now that the market's changing, are you starting to see that the kind of market's peaking, and what advice are you giving to buyers and sellers now that there's this little market change going on?
Yeah, it's fascinating because the stuff that's happening with the interest rates and what's happening with the Fed is happening day to day, but then we have this market data that's a month behind when you look at the MLS overall. So it really depends who my conversation is with, but if you were to look at inventory online, we still have a month of inventory in Los Angeles.
Right.
A month. And we know that if we have 0 to 3 months of inventory, we're in a seller's market. If we have 3 to 6 months of inventory, we're sort of in a neutral market. And if we have 6 months plus, we're in a buyer's market. So candidly, when I show them the data of what's happening that's on the MLS, we're still in this heavy seller's market. And I think the challenge that people need to understand is that we were definitely going 120 miles an hour in real estate 2 months ago, but things are still going 90 miles an hour.
Right.
Because, that house that we shot in Fontana together, for example, it still got 3 offers the first week.
Nice.
I don't want to say that that's in a normal market, that's really
good.
Excellent,
Yeah.
So houses are getting 3 instead of 16.
It just wasn't the 10 plus.
Right, exactly.
like a few months ago. Yeah.
But for the buyers that can muscle and stomach what's happening in the world and can still afford the payment with the rising interest rates, I think are in a really good position because the competition is not what it was. This is the first time in 18 months I've had conversations with listing agents to say, we're looking for around the list price.
Yeah.
And I know we're seeing these price reductions, but I think they're being over exemplified in more than they're really happening,
Right.
So I think when I'm telling sellers, I really do want them to understand the micro data, what's happening in their market, but I want them to understand inventory. I think more than ever, houses need to be priced correctly and be presentable, but 100% they're still selling.
That was actually my next question about pricing. And I actually heard this on a podcast that I watch a lot called PBD Podcast. I don't know if you heard of him before. Well, he was just talking about, a lot of people in the seller's market, right? They might say, okay, my house is worth $1 million right now. So they're not willing to price it at maybe $930, $940,
right?
Because they want that $1 million.
Right.
But his take on it is, if you're getting $930, $940, don't look at it as if you're losing $60,000. Look at it like you're making an extra 60, because if you're not pricing it right, it's going to stay on the market a while, and eventually it can go under.
Totally.
Maybe go into 800s, and then you just lost all that money as opposed to making that 940, 950, and you really made 60 more than what you may be getting a few mons from now.
Absolutely.
So pricing is just so important right now.
It's all about that, and you have to remind people, especially, if you've been in your home for just the last 3 or 4 years, you're sitting on a tremendous amount of equity. Mm-hmm. So if you've been in your home more than that, you have a buttload of equity in the market. So you really can't look at it and say it's selling for $930. You have to look at it and say, my house appreciated by 15%.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it wasn't 20%.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But no, they have to be realistic. And I do believe that the price adjustments are reflective of the houses that were priced incorrectly to begin with.
Yeah.
They weren't being reduced to what they're being reduced to what they should have been listed at. I think for buyers, if you understand the history of interest rates, then I think it's much easier to swallow where we are right now. So if you look at, Fannie Mae has all this data online. So if you look at interest rates from 1971 to 2021, the average 30-year fixed mortgage is a little bit over 7.25%.
Wow.
7.25% over the last 30 years. So it's like, ask your mom.
So we're not even there yet.
We're not there yet. And historically speaking, that's been the average. So how bad is it really when we're at 5.5 or 6?
Right.
You're right. It's not 3. But I was calling you and telling you to buy a house when it was at 3. So get it now at 6, because I'm not quite sure that it's going to be that by the end of the year.
Right.
So there's a segment of the market that's always going to need somewhere to live for whatever reason. So I expect to see people that, don't have to leave. They're comfortable enough in their house. I can understand those sellers that have a 3% interest rate on their mortgage not wanting to sell and buy for 7. But I think there's still a lot of people that are uncomfortable looking for opportunities to move up. And rent is not staying fixed. So it's like, if you need to move, if you need a place, 6% is not bad.
Right. Yeah. What's a tip or maybe some advice that you can give to struggling agents out there, or someone maybe that's new in the industry? It's a question I like to ask everybody I interview, because it's the Always Closing podcast. So I'm interviewing people that are always closing. So, advice from you is really beneficial to people that may be new in the industry.
I appreciate it, man. I think if I was new in the industry and I was giving someone, and I wanted some advice, I would be looking for a little bit of structure. So I think it's important as a new agent, because you don't have a lot of clients that you're taking care of yet, to make sure that you have a grasp of your day in time blocking and then committing to a handful of things that you have to do. And I don't think you have to make it overly complicated. So I would say, number 1, you have to prospect. Yeah. We have goals for our team, and if we assume that every 40 conversations results in 1 escrow, I need everybody on the team to have 28 conversations a day to close 12 deals by the end of the year. So when I do the math for how long it takes to make these calls, it's about 3 hours of prospecting a day. But if you got nothing else to do, and this is your job, right, I expect you to be hammering the phones. So I would say the day should be broken up by, number 1, prospecting, hammering the phones, door knocking, doing whatever you're going to do to look for conversations. That doesn't mean views.
Yeah. And that's not a crazy amount of calls to make either, it's not a tiny amount,
no,
but it's very doable.
No, it's super doable. And like I said, if you're not juggling all of these other things in the business yet, then what else are you doing? It's just not sexy. People are watching this podcast instead of making their calls because it's not fun and it's not what people don't want to believe that the deals come from the calls. They want to believe that we're getting DM'd from every one of our videos. Far from true.
Right.
So number one, I would say prospect and don't let go of that. The second one I would say is learning. If you are new and if you are young and if you are just like switching industries, people will be holding, something against you because they don't believe that you know anything of value.
Right.
And you probably don't know anything of value. So go make yourself valuable. And I think that means watching podcasts like this, but I think more importantly, you should know the numbers of your market. So for like Ness, who's working in the IE, I expect her to know what's happening in the IE. For Bea, that's here in LA, I want her to know the numbers that are moving. So know the market and study the market. So every single day, I would say follow up on the market, read what is happening in the world economy and the local economy. The third piece I would say is marketing. Make videos.
Right.
Super, super simple. Carve out a part of your day to come up with the content. And if you're not coming up with the content, shooting your content. But I would say those three things are...
You're going to be on the right track.
100% on the right track. And then that at least gives you some structure. So from 9 to 11, I'm making calls. From 11:30 to 1:30, I'm working on my content. From 1:30 to 3, you're self-employed, you're taking a long lunch. Whatever, but then it gives you some structure because I think that's where a lot of people are crippled. It's very tough to be your own boss and have an empty calendar.
Absolutely.
How much better do you perform when there are things on it because then you're forced to get your work done in between.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of structure will go a long way, and it's not going to be easy. Fight the resistance.
Yeah.
You just got to show up and fight the resistance, and it will eventually get easier. You've been in sales, so you know this, but why is it that it's always the last call is the person that picks up and wants to transact?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You have to I'm not going to use bad language because on YouTube I remember we can't have it too bad, but you have to eat enough dirt to one day stop eating dirt.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to...
Right.
That's the only way you learn, right? The more you do it,
right,
and the more you fail at things, it just makes you better.
Right.
The more you do it. So
100%. Can I actually add one more to that?
Yeah.
So it would be prospecting, learning, marketing, and then the last one I think has to be mental health and physical health because they connect. And what I mean by that is I think especially when you're so client facing and in something like sales, your energy is huge. And the way that you feel, is translated to people. So I know for fact, one of the reasons my mom has been so successful is because she is just, if you've ever been in a room with her, it just explodes.
Right.
It's sometimes it's there's not enough space for her, but I love it. And people gravitate towards that, and it's not fake, and people can feel that genuineness. So whatever you have to do to fill up your cup, which is either watching Tony Robbins, Tom Ferry, listening to motivational stuff, whatever, go to yoga, and then taking care of yourself, because I think it just translates,
That's very good advice. I'm going to switch over a little bit to more personal stuff. So you recently got married. So how's the married life treating you? And it looks like you had an amazing honeymoon too.
Oh, thank you. Man, I'm blessed. So married life has been great. I was climbing Mount Everest on our 6-month anniversary. But she knew that when we got together that this is what I love to do. So, this is the first time I'm announcing it. We're going to start working on having a baby.
Awesome.
So that's coming in the future, probably, hopefully, God willing, soon, whatever the timing is on that. But she's doing great. She's in her residency. She's a plastic surgery resident in San Diego.
Wow.
So she works a lot, but in a not gross way, she's reminds me of my mom. She just works so hard. She's so focused.
Right.
So she was my Mount Everest for sure.
It's amazing.
Thank you, brother.
And what's next? Obviously you just said the baby's in the works, but maybe business-wise, what do you got what do you got planned?
So Personally, business-wise, I'm working on building an ADU. So I bought a property right before I left to climb, and I rehabbed it, got a renter in there, and I'm building in the back. So I'm working on that. I'm really focused on how I can build this team of ours to help these agents make as much money and help as many families as they want. So I love being out there, but I really do like this role of focusing on the business and how to bring business in and how to support them growing, because you know the handful that are on the team with us, I can tell really love the business. They're like mini versions of my mom. And
yeah, I mean, from what I've interacted with them, like even when you were gone and they were setting up appointments,
yeah,
they're on top of it. So you got a solid team over there.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for that. So I want to help them take it to the next level. But I think that's generally where I'm at. Between that, I haven't committed to a new like mountain or physical. I've been kicking around a lot of things, but I'm trying to take it easy on my family because I don't think they're quite.
Yeah, I could remember when I saw your mom while you were still up there climbing at your guys' Long Beach listing, and I could tell like she was a little stressed out about you, you know. So
yeah, and
it's like, let's pray he's gonna be home soon. You know?
Right. And I'm sure it'll change even more when I have a kid, but it's very hard for me to, I love climbing and that was a goal of mine, but it wasn't like a finish line, you know? It's like you don't do something and then hang your hat on it the rest of your life. I want to keep growing. The weirdest thing about having a big goal like Mount Everest, and I don't want to get on a big tangent because I know we're wrapping, but when you are working on something for so long and you visualize something for so long and it's done, there is this weird void that you're trying to figure out how to fill. And I don't mean that, superficially, because I'm very grateful for accomplishing it. But when it was finished, I thought to myself, should I have waited till I was older to have done this? Do I wish I would have failed, because then I would have been able to do this again? Because I woke up every morning.
What's next after Mount Everest is already the tallest peak, So.
Well, it's not even the tallest. It's that it was so significant to me. Like that, it happened to be the tallest, but that was so significant to me. So I do want to find a way to kind of like plug that. And I think maybe it'll be the kid or it'll be the growing business. But I'm trying to ease into telling the family I want to climb some mountains in Pakistan, but they're not quite ready yet.
You give them a break for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Krys, thank you again so much for doing this.
Absolutely, man.
Where can people get a hold of you if they want to follow you or follow your content?
Yeah, I would love if everyone wanted to give us a follow. My Instagram is just my name, Krys Benyamein. Our YouTube, we're really trying to focus on the YouTube. We love posting videos there, is Estate of Grace. That's our team name, Estate of Grace. And that's our website, estateofgrace.com. And if you go to our Instagram, my phone number is in my bio.
And we'll tag all his links whenever we post this or on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
So also I want to give a shout out to Casa Bloom Studios, to Lonnie and Louie for letting us use the studio today. If you guys need a space to film a podcast, shoot any videos, host events, it's located right here in downtown Santa Ana. So give them a follow as well. It's Casa Bloom Studios. So thanks to them for letting us use it today. And once again, thank you for watching the Always Closing podcast. We'll see you on the next one.